Oh, this is such a versatile but still visceral bike. It really is a joy to ride. My name's Guy Kestevan. I've been a professional bike and kit tester for over 25 years. And today, I'm absolutely delighted to be riding the latest third generation version of Mason's Bokeh. Super fast, super fun, alloy framed, agile adventurer. So first, we're going to get some riding in, and I'll talk about that, and then we'll stop and take a look at the details so you can really appreciate the finer points of this beautiful piece of alloy engineering. But of course, the big advantage with aluminium is the low weight. So this frame in this 54 is 1.69 kilos compared to 2.4 for the steel exposure. And even with dropper post and chunkier tyres on, whole bike is 9.26. So basically you're gaining 700 gram advantage in the frame weight, and you can really feel that keenness to accelerate. But while aluminium has a reputation for being light, it also has a reputation for being harsh from the early days of the oversized tube bikes. But I have to say, every time I've ridden the Mason Bokeh, it's really confounded that with a beautifully balanced and surprisingly smooth riding, but still urgent and responsive ride feel. And it's still got it. I was kind of nervous about getting on this bike because it is one of my favourites, but I needn't have worried. Still beautifully poised in terms of the plumbing. This Data custom progressive butted tubing that they put together for Mason really is something special. You can feel the power going down through those forced cranks, but it's not harsh or punishing. It's just very positive and very planted. And while it's definitely built for speed and doesn't have as many fixtures as the exposure bike, you've still got triple mounts on the forks, each rated for 30 kilos. You've got dedicated lowrider and front rack bosses. You've got built-in dynamo routing. You've got these smart port fixtures on the frame for really neat cable routing throughout. You've got a twin bolt top tube mount, bottle cage mounts where you'd expect them on the main frame as well, and then full rack and separate fender mounts on the rear end. So it's still totally ready to get bagged up for your biggest adventures, or fit mudguards to take on the muckiest weather on a daily basis. It really is built to be super versatile, but also give you that real luxury feel to every ride you take it on. And flying along here between the golden wheat fields and the gallops for the racehorses, this couldn't feel more of a performance thoroughbred. And at the rear, you've got room for a 700 by 45C tyre, and then in this rangefinder AS carbon fork up front, you can fit up to 50mm. But I have to say, I really like the fact that they haven't gone supersized with the tyre clearance on this. So I think it helps categorise this bike as something for people who want to prioritise speed, still get a smooth ride and a really good range of tyres, but they don't want that kind of borderline MTB experience from their gravel bike. Although to be fair, you know, if you go 650B, you have got room to fit 2.1s, as I say. And while in its previous incarnations and the prototypes for this bike have proved that it's more than capable of crushing transcontinental rides and races, in fact, it's still got that insolent, instant agility and acceleration. Makes it just as fun when you're playing out on the single track, on a quick after work ride, or a lunchtime. And Bokeh, like a lot of the names used by Mason for their bikes, is a photographic term. It actually comes from the Japanese for out of focus, and it really blurs the difference between that kind of super fast, almost road bike feel, and then that continent crushing distance pedigree. And even with that axis dropper in, the bike only weighs 924 kilos. Without it, just a zip carbon post, 8.8 kilos. So you're competing with carbon bikes on weight. But what Mason and Data have done with this tube set and give it a real flow and liveliness in a way that's basically alchemy. But when it's the ride quality that's mythical, that's something I'm really happy to buy into on this Bokeh. And I like the fact that they've kept it quick-witted and agile, because it really suits the way that this bike rides. I like the fact that the head tubes are relatively short. Its natural pose is kind of head down and predatory, because that's the vibe it gives off. And I think a lot of people will stay with the kind of rigid post option for that purist lightweight vibe. But even this 50mm stroke version gives a surprising amount of freedom to get your freak on. And then if you run it just slightly into its travel, it's actually a suspension seat post. But if I had the choice, I'd have the longest travel option you could get into your chosen size of frame. And of course, 71 head angle, 73 degree seat angle is kind of the default geometry for mountain bikes for a couple of decades. But now, even in gravel bike terms, that's quite feisty. It's on the responsive side of agile for sure. It's almost road bike angle. Thanks very much, cheers. So this is a bike that's very much living on its wits, not stabilised and dumbed down slightly in its reactions. It's a proper live wire, and the bar widths and stem lengths are chosen appropriately for each size. There's a whole range of sizes as well, from 48 through to 62. So in the same way that all the features and the finishing are right up there with the finest bespoke custom bikes, so is the fine tuning of the fit that you're able to do. But without the kind of worry that the numbers you've dreamt up might actually not work out so well. Oh, it's the way it kicks the back wheel around on power climbs. Just drifts a little. Even when you're driving, not descending. Properly inspiring in terms of keeping the speed up. This has got true racer's heart. However far you're going, that beautiful balance between long distance smoothing, buoyancy, and that real feeling of a bike that loves to be pushed and played with is what drew me to the Bokeh in the first place. And I'm so relieved and delighted that this Bokeh 3, even though it's definitely a more refined version, still has it in spades. And I can remember riding the first Bokeh and being absolutely enraptured by it, giving it a perfect score and saying, I think it was the most perfectly holistic, balanced bike I'd ever ridden in terms of a complete package. And I have to say, Dom and the team at Mason, they've done it again with the new bike. The handling, the tube set feel, these fire crests working together with these really impressive René Hurst tyres. And I'm a big fan of these Ritchie WCS gravel bars as well, with the slight flare on them and the aero top. Really comfortable with just a bit of extra control in the drops when you need it. Well, this is my third time on the new SRAM Force. I absolutely love it. Great lever shape, fantastic functionality, and it looks great as well. I thought the exposure might have knocked it off my favourite Mason list. Because that is a gloriously glidingly smooth bike, but that little bit of extra pertness, poke, precision, whatever you want to call it, just sensation of speed, vitality. This Bokeh, still the one I go for out of the Mason range. Which is handy because I think it's one of the cheaper options. You know, I mean, obviously saying it's cheap is a relative thing compared to other Masons. You could get an alloy bike from the Tribon range from Decathlon, or even a Sonda Camino, and I think you'd be really surprised by how well it rides. But the level of delicious detailing, to use my favourite Mason cliche, from the graphics to the parts picks, to the fact that you're getting really good corrosion protection, you're getting bonded in bosses for the smoothest lines. That blended rear dropout they fitted now. I'm going to stop and do a tech talk in a second so you can see all those details properly, but overall, just the way this bike rides is just truly next level. So we've established it rides brilliantly, but a big part of buying a Mason is the level of detailing in the design. Dom really does do a fantastic job on these bikes. So straight in, it's that Didachia. I never know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. I looked up how to pronounce Bokeh, but I've never looked up how to pronounce Dada. So we'll just leave it at Dada. Anyway, ultra top end, Italian, custom butted tube set. Oh, I'll let it do the talking itself. There you go. Custom formed, progressive butted, so the tubes gradually get thinner along their lengths towards the centre and then thicken up at the ends to really create that really fluid ride feel, but also to keep frame weight down. You can see sort of semi-smoothed welds under this paintwork. There are 3 different colours to choose from. This is the new sepia option. I have to say, big fan of this colourway. If I was to get one, I think this is the way I'd be leaning. You've got that overshoot there on the oval top tube into these big seat stays. I mean, you'd think that was quite a blunt back end, but just the way it's tapered, and obviously the tube wall work inside it really does produce a fabulous ride. Definitely plenty of purpose to it, but when you hit something big, surprisingly forgiving. Then you've got this really gentle curve on the chainstays here. They nip into that big through 56 through shell bottom bracket. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's another sort of Mason exclusive, but as you can see, the dropouts have now been really beautifully blended in. You've got a little monogram on there. You've got neat replaceable dropouts there. It's not UDH. There are some gravel bikes coming through now with the new SRAM derailleur hanger system on there, but this is still a standard one. But I guess, you know, it's got a replaceable
derailleur, you know, the whole dropout is replaceable, so potentially you could upgrade to a UDH in future. I don't know if Dom's planning that or not. He's on holiday at the moment, so I can't ask him, but you know, I wouldn't put it past him. And then already talked about the mounts. You've got rack mounts there, and there you've got a little mudguard mount on the rear there. You've got bottle mounts. I mean, compared to the exposure and the ISO, you know, those would have like triple or even, you know, 2 sets of bottle mounts on there for extra carrying capacity. This has got these 2 standard bottle mounts there, but you can see because they're bonded into the tubes, they're just super neat, super flush. And if you look down here, you've got a port for a front mech cable as well, because quite a lot of Bokehs are still being sold with twin rings, because a lot of Bokeh owners actually get 1 set of gravel wheels and then a set of road bike wheels as well, and that's something I'm going to dip into right at the end of the video. As you see, you've got top tube mounts there as well for your fuel bag. This one's squared off on the top side and then rounded on the underneath on that main tube, and then this aperture fork on the front. It's the same fork as the exposure, with all those cargo mounts down there. And again, it's really subtle Mason logo down the back of the fork there. And again, you know, you've got rack mounts on the inside, you've got that dynamo mount on the front, and the whole bike is just beautifully put together. Again, replaceable axle ends there, so in the unlikely event that you have any problems with your fork threading, you can just pop out the inserts you haven't written off the full fork. The whole bike is just designed to be super practical. You know, those cable ports as well that I've talked about. There's the dynamo port on the top as well. And in this build, you know, it's set up proper rugged. Yes, you got the Firecrest wheels, which are definitely an all-rounder wheel, but they're still 25mm internal. So they put plenty of beef into these 42mm Rene Hurst tyres, which I've been very impressed with. Then you've got those Ritchie bars I was raving about. You've got the SRAM Force, that little bit of sort of rainbow glitter in there. You've got Data Super Zero stem. You've got Physic Argo saddle, which always looks a bit clunky to me, but is actually super comfortable. You've got that Reverb Axis 50 post in there, just to give you a little bit of drop and a little bit of suspension if you need it. And then SRAM Force on the back again with that big 1044 Explorer cassette on there. And down in the belly, that Q on the crankset means that that's got a Quark power meter in there, so you're getting all the information you need for your training or just your pacing, because there are a lot of people racing these Bokehs and a lot of people doing very well on them. And then as we flip it around to the far side, you can see you've got that 56 through BB shell on there. I'll be honest, I think that's a bit ugly compared to how smoothly blended all the rest of the tubes are, that sort of square edge on it, but it means that all the cables and hoses that you need for your controls, if you're running it wired, can all slide under the bottom bracket super cleanly without getting in the way of the BB or creating awkward routing. And you can see, tube really slims down into there. I mean, it doesn't kick down in that kind of weird dog leg that a lot of frame designs use to keep the frame clearance in there, but it really tapers down and kind of sits lower in the bottom bracket shell, which is how they get the room for that 45mm tyre in there, or a 2.1 if you're running 650s. And as we come up to the front, here's one I've prepared earlier, because it's a bit of a pull out to do one-handed. As you can see, there's a 6mm Allen key on the end there, so you can undo the front axle or undo the rear axle with that same skewer, or just, you know, take it with you as a bit of a theft deterrent, I guess. Oh, and actually, while we're here, you can see that really nice detail in there, that little cutaway for the dynamo wire, so it runs in nice and flush and there's no catching or bending of the wires that cause problems over time. So there you go, Mason Bokeh 3, an absolutely beautiful bike to ride. You know, real proof yet again that alloy done right can be an amazing material for bikes. If you're thinking of alloy as the cheap option, just look at the workmanship and the beauty that's gone into that. I mean, I can waffle on about it all I want. I would recommend that you go and meet a mason for yourself, you know, go down to their barn in East Sussex to have a look around, or just, you know, go to one of their demo events. I pretty much guarantee as well that anyone you bump into who's riding a mason will absolutely rave about it. They've got an amazing community of kind of, I wouldn't use the phrase cult following, but let's say they're fairly fervent fans just because the beautiful way the bike's put together and how well they ride. But anyway, you know, enough of me going on about it. I mean, it's not perfect for everyone. Let's get some realism in here. It's definitely a firmer ride than the steel bikes, you know, but that's deliberate. It's a lighter, faster feeling bike, and that's what I'm going to just explore in the last clip, is how well this works as a road bike. And you know, they are very, very pricey. This kind of premium finishing and thought, and the length Dom and his team go into with the custom tubing and a very, very long design and proving process, you know, means that you can pick up a good alloy off the peg bike or even a carbon bike for the price of a Mason frame. But if you've got the money and you want a genuine fast, far bike, and one of the best balance rides I've come across, if you still like that alertness and agility from a sharper handling gravel bike, then this really is something special. So massive thanks to Dom for sending me this for a channel exclusive. Massive thanks to Giro Cycling UK, PE's Products, Torque Nutrition, Enduro Bearings, and Hebtro Co., my long-term channel sponsors. Huge thanks to my Patreon subscribers who pledge on a monthly basis, and they get early behind-the-scenes edits as a thank you, and they get all the normal cuts ad-free, so there's no interruption. If you really like what I'm doing on the channel, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. There's a link at the end. If you've not subscribed already, please subscribe, click for notifications, and give this a thumbs up so YouTube knows you enjoyed it. But if you're into your gravel bikes or your mountain bikes and you've got mates who are into the same, and you like your Cutami jib so far, then please recommend the channel to them as well, because that's the best way to continue it growing. But for now, I've been Guy Kesteven on Guy Case TV, and I've almost finished talking about the brand new Mason Bokeh 3. And this is the transformation I was talking about. Swapped in my own fire crests. 30mm Conti GPP 5000 TRs. And you've got a really swift, and if anything, running it with the smaller tyres really brings home what a brilliant job Dom and the Italians have done with this tube set. Because even though it's a properly robust single track ready bike, feels absolutely beautiful. And swapping to that rigid zip post means complete bike weight is down to 8.26 kilos, so near as damn it a kilo off the gravel bike configuration that I was testing it in before. I can tell you, this thing absolutely rips. And because you've got that faster steering geometry as well, it just feels really, really at home on the road. Doesn't feel too docile and too steady. This'll go hunting in a chain gang as happily as a conventional road bike will. But then if you're fancying a wild weekend, get your 45mm in there. Again, it's just such a beautifully engineered blank canvas for all sorts of riding. Bokeh was one of the original gravel bikes, and I'm delighted to say this perfect pioneer is still one of the best.